Good afternoon, all. And my video this afternoon is to debunk Thomas Henley's recent video called Debunking the Autism Savant myth. Now, I'm a fan of Thomas Henley, but I don't know why he went way astray and did this wrong to some autistic people in the autistic community in publishing this video. But it's very, very harmful, and, well, I just have something to say about his video in debunking it.
It is very much a trope, particularly pushed by mainstream films like Rain Man. Kind of this sort of view of autism as being sort of a savantist type gift.
I don't know if Mr. Henley consulted any information about autistic savants, but the late Daryl Treffert was probably the world's expert in savants and autistic savants. So Dr. Treffert, he says that Savant Syndrome is a rare but remarkable condition in which persons with autism or other developmental or central nervous system disorders have some spectacular islands of genius that stand in stark marked contrast to overall limitations. It occurs as frequently as 1 in 10 persons with autistic spectrum disorder. And so what does this mean? Some islands of genius or some savant abilities. Well, one thing it means is something that's very prevalent in autistic people, all autistic people. It's just that it's a lot more of an extreme in autistic savants. And that is the spiky profile. When someone has a spiky profile, it means there is a big difference in their level of ability from one task to another. They might be really great at doing one thing, but then really struggle with something else. And so one of the things about autistic people is autistic people tend to have spiky profiles. They are not generalists that are, if they have a skill they're good at, you cannot assume they're good at everything, at every single skill. That's not autism. That's neurotypicals. That's not autism. But autistic people have spiky profiles. It is not a trope. Autistic savants are not a trope. They are not a misconception, and they are not as rare as Mr. Henley and his other presenter in the video try to make it sound and misportray. Now, I personally have, from the University of South Florida, autism diagnosis, high-functioning autism with splinter savant traits, especially in art and legal abilities. That makes me an autistic savant. Markedly impaired verbal abilities, but visual spatial remains. Now, I'm autistic, okay? I believe Mr. Henley is an Aspie, meaning that he would be what you would call such high-functioning autism that he would be considered or previously considered to be someone with Aspergers syndrome. Well, I'm not that high-functioning. I'm an autistic savant. So you have to look at the particular subtype of autistic person the person is. You know, once you've seen one person with autism, you've seen one person with autism. But that doesn't mean someone who is the highest functioning autistic type, Aspergers, should be putting down another autistic subtype of a person who actually exists, autistic savants, as though they don't exist, or they are a trope, or it's a misconception. And yes, there was a Rain Man, Kim Peek. He was an autistic savant. He was a calendar calculator, and he was awesome. That doesn't make him any less valid of an autistic person than an Asperger's high-functioning autistic person such as Mr. Henley. I'm an autistic savant, but I'm not the kind of autistic savant who is a calendar calculator. So, well, I'm something like Rain Man. I am not Rain Man either. But that doesn't mean it's okay to invalidate all autistic savants. People who are autistic, who may be a different type of autistic than Mr. Henley. And so, well, what kind of autistic does that mean? If being an autistic savant means having these exceptional, spiky savant abilities, these islands of special ability, which, yes, may be gifted, but they are a very narrow range. They are not generalist abilities like a neurotypical. They are a spiky profile of narrow but savant abilities. But you have to look for the juxtaposition of the extremely disabling parts of the troughs of the spiky abilities. The parts that are very disabling, that may be more severe autism. Now, how do we know what that would be? Well, we know that under the DSM-5, there are now considered levels 1, 2, and 3 autism. Level 1 would be somebody who's portraying himself like Mr. Henley, low support needs. Somebody who's so high functioning that he's almost indistinguishable from a neurotypical. He can mask and pass as a neurotypical, at least that's what I've observed, Aspergers. But there's also levels 2 and 3. Level 2 requires a lot more support needs, especially because the social aspects of the autistic communication and interaction disability need much more support. And so, how do we know what I am? Because I was diagnosed under the DSM-4. New York State, after 1966, parents could obligate themselves to support their adult children if they entered into a contract. After the age of 18, they could be made to support their adult children who were considered incapacitated from earning a gainful living by work due to physical or mental disability. This v. Jarvis case, citing Vranic v. Vranic case, said that a parent can obligate themselves by a contract. It's not based on a New York statute or on the common law. This is after 1966. This is before 1987. And if they do that, the court is without any authority in New York to alter that agreement. And also, in Capello v. Capello, Citing Carroll v. Carroll, the court in New York said that a stipulation entered into an open court is a binding contract on the parents. Goldman v. Goldman, and this is for adult child support agreements before 1980, entered into before 1980. A New York Court of Appeals held that where a separation agreement, which was valid and unimpeached, was incorporated in a divorce judgment and survived, that the New York court could modify it, but that it did have to enforce the contractual provision. Now, when I was 14 years old, my parents divorced. Claire Ann Day and Kenneth Gordon Day. Let's look at what they did. Let's look at the paperwork. This is the divorce court of my parents. Claire Ann Day and Kenneth Gordon Day. And it says here that my parents entered into a separation agreement contract, and that it is approved, confirmed, and ratified in all of its parts and made a part of this divorce decree as though fully set forth herein. But as to its legal effects and validity, it is not affected, impaired, amended, or changed because it is not merged in the judgment, but survives the same, and the parties are ordered and directed to comply with it on its terms at all times and places. The court entered its order. So that means there's no statute of limitations, and they have to comply with it in any place, including anywhere in the United States, as well as in Mexico, that there's no statute of limitations on enforcing that adult child support award they made when I was 14 years old, that adjudicated that I met the requirements to get it, which at that time was to be incapacitated from being able to substantially support myself from work due to physical or mental disability, which is because I'm autistic. And that was May 70, April 8th, 1970. I was 14 years old. That is a final adjudicated court decision. And here is a copy of my parents' contract, their separation agreement, entered into on March 20th, 1970, in which my father agreed to pay me all medical and dental expenses, including any specialist, psychologist, or psychiatrist for life. Agreed to pay for my entire college education that I select for life. And he and my mother signed it. It was notarized, and it was recorded in the official records of White Plains, New York. What level of autistic am I? Since as of the age of 14, in a final adjudicated divorce judgment of my parents, they stipulated and agreed that my support needs were that high. They were not minimal support needs. So, minimal support needs are level 1. Substantial support needs are level 2. There is also level 3. I'm somewhere between level 2 and 3. Now, why is that? Well, my diagnosis says I have markedly impaired verbal abilities. And you have to look at the juxtaposition between the gifted, spiky, splinter savant traits and the severe disabilities that you find in Savant Syndrome. Is severe deficits in verbal and nonverbal social communication skills. Well, my diagnosis seems to fit level 3, and my parents' divorce and New York State Child Support Award entered in 1970 is between level 2 and 3. Therefore, by saying that an autistic savant is a trope, and it's sort of a savantist, and trying to say that basically Thomas Henley is basically invalidating all autistic savants who are around 10% of the autistic population. That's not an insignificant number. And that's just really wrong. And so I'm doing this video because I'm one of the autistic people he invalidated. Now, like I said, I'm a fan of Mr. Henley. I watch a lot of his videos. But on this one, debunking the autism savant myth and calling it a myth, he gets a fail. A big F. He gets it wrong. And he owes the autistic community and every single autistic savant out there a big apology. And that's my video for today. And if you like my videos, if you're learning things from them, please subscribe. And please hit the notification button and you'll be notified when I post more videos. And thank you very much.